Hello and welcome everyone to VALS National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children Days podcast. I acknowledge and respect the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land that the VALS Present Office is located on. And for all of you who are watching this today, all the different lands that you're watching this from as well. I would also like to pay my respect to their elders, past, present and future, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who are involved with VALS and more broadly in the fight to achieve justice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and particularly for children and young people. Wherever you are listening to this in Australia, you are on unceded land. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Justin Mohamed is a proud Aboriginal man of the Gooreng Gooreng Nation near Bundaberg in Queensland. He has dedicated the past 25 years to working towards building a stronger and healthier nation for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. He is Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People at the Commission for Children and Young People in Victoria. Welcome today, Justin.
Thank you.
Justin, this year's theme is Proud in Culture, Strong in Spirit. What did the children and young people you spoke with for the Our Youth, Our Way report tell you about the importance of culture?
Yeah, it was amazing our conversations we had with many young people individually and also in groups, and culture wasn't far out of the conversation, even though we're talking about things around justice and homelessness and some of the issues that they may be going through and the hurdles that young people kind of confront them during their journey. And it was very strong and consistent across the state that culture played a very important part in every one of those young people's lives, and at different levels and different sort of links where they see it as strong, but nevertheless, culture was raised in nearly every one of the conversations we had. So we walked away from many of the conversations, not only just looking at and hearing from young people about the issues that they were confronted with, but when they spoke about culture, they used that as a very much from a strength base, that it was a very core part of them moving through a tough time, them feeling that they got that protection, the support, care, love, and then the lovely, I think the connection they have is about they want to move through this. They don't want to stay where they are, and they want to be strong and resilient, and they want to leave those footprints for the next ones coming through, that they are strong and resilient and linked to culture. So it was something you couldn't avoid, and it was very pleasing to, as an Aboriginal man, seeing the next generation coming through speaking so passionately about it.
Thanks, Justin. And I think that's so important. So often when we talk about the justice system, there's such a focus on, I suppose, deficiencies or vulnerabilities. And I think celebrating young people's potential and their connection to culture and the strengths they have and their community have are just really critical. The report that the Commission released this year, Our Youth, Our Way, it also focused on the voices and experiences of children and young people. Under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, children have the right to express their views freely in all matters affecting them. Why is it important to listen to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people?
Well, I think it's very important. And when we started thinking about how we were going to do this inquiry, which meant, obviously we needed to have evidence base and we needed to weigh it up against statistics and the issues that were out there. And when we started talking about evidence, it was that a lot of the evidence which is out there is usually written by adults. It's gathered by adults. It's even articulated there through an adult's voice or their view about how things work. And so it was very important for us that we went out and spoke to the young people that were living and breathing the situation that we were talking about, or that we were trying to advocate for. So very important we felt it's very important that if this report was going to have any credibility, it was going to be something which we could stand on and say this is what is best for our young people. We had to have our children and young people's voice right throughout the report, which we endeavoured to do. So critically important to include young people's voices. And the reason why it's so easy to leave young people out of the conversation about themselves. And the world we live in is a lot different to when I was younger. It's a lot different to what it was even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. The generation that's lived through COVID, that's going to be a completely another story again from what the young people that are now in their mid-20s who have gone through that situation or COVID as a young adult. So being 16, living through this sort of last 18 months is going to be a story, and capturing their thoughts and how that's affecting them is very important as well. So I just think with everything we've done, there is our young people have got a voice. They've got very strong views of what they need in the sense what is best for them. And what we did hear from many of them was when we posed that question, what would you like to be done? What if you had a wish? What would it be? Their replies were consistently around things that cost very little money, but they require a lot of commitment and a lot of dedication. And they wanted to feel protected. They wanted to have a safe place to sleep and to live. They wanted to be cared for, and they wanted to have love within their, and be loved by community, and having one person or at least one person they can call upon or be in their corner for them. So when many of them said similar things like that. So that's why it's important to have the voice of Aboriginal children and young people, because their solutions to the problems that we see, I think, can be achieved in a very simplistic, but when I say simplistic, but crucial and critical to their future and their moment of time that they're in. So without that, we would have probably gone off on another tangent. With that, it kept us very much connected.
Thanks, Justin. And I think that's a really important message for everyone who's listening to this today. Kind of my takeaway from what you've just said is talking to children and young people and centering their voice takes out the guesswork and really makes sure that any advocacy that's done on their behalf really helps them realise their own sort of aspirations and their hopes and goals.
And if I can kind of continue on that, is that some of the things they find very frustrating isn't, I suppose, the situation they're in, but it's the continued system that we've built, and getting young people to continue to tell their stories over and over again to complete strangers, new workers, and I think for many of us it's probably, if we can provide something that we can build is far easier than possibly having one worker that can go across many different parts of justice or child protection or homelessness, and maybe support around rehabilitation. That if that one person can be on that journey for that with that young person for a longer period of time, is what they're asking for. And I think that's the challenge that we have, is to make the system to be able for that to happen.
So Justin, listening to you speak, I think one of the real barriers to people who are working in the youth justice system and child protection system is that perhaps there's a lack of trust that children might actually have really clear sense of what needs to be done to improve things for them and for their peers. I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that a little bit.
I think we've got to understand that many of the young people that we're talking about in youth justice or in child protection, that they've been a part of a system, they've been part of networks that have continually let them down or abused them. And when I say let them down, broken promises, we'll pick you up and they don't get picked up, or we'll come and visit you and there's no visit, or the system itself, where they've been moved out of one situation, which is deemed to be unsafe, and they get put into another situation by people that are there to say we're doing the best for you, and it actually creates more trauma, or they get more, there's more hurt that comes with that. And we all know what I'm talking about. And that's where the system itself actually traumatises the young person even more than while they were first brought into it. So the trust is very, very low, and so it should be, because there's the young people, like all groups, but as a young person, and they talk to each other, they share stories, and so the trust of the system, of government, of another caseworker, it takes a while to build that up. So the important part that I found in this is that we've got to be patient. We've got to be patient when we're dealing with as service providers and working with young people, that we're working with many of these young people who we can give them all the right, all their great intentions. We can say we're going to do this and this, but in the back of their mind they're saying, is this really going to happen? Because that's their learned experience, that many of these things all fall apart or they don't actually happen. So one is to build that trust, we've got to be true to our word, and that if that's as easy as that, we're going to pick you up at a certain time, that we make sure we do that. or to the point is that we'll follow you up, that we make sure that that happens. The second part to this is that we've got to be very patient to allow the young person to be able to test that relationship, to be able to see if it's real. And they might act that out in a number of different ways, but not, I think the system and often is too quick when they do act out a certain way, so well, they aren't appreciative of it, or they don't want it, or they just want to continue on their life that they've had. But really, if we look at it, they're testing how serious and how steadfast is what's been offered is going to stay there, and are they going to follow through with what they've said. Patience and that commitment goes hand in hand, and building that relationship with the young person. But can I say, from my experience, and not that I don't work in the service delivery, I know there's plenty of great workers out there doing the best they can, is that it's a lot of the young people, once they finally realise that someone's going to listen to them and not being spoken at, they open up and they really share a whole heap of stuff, and they really want to work through things, but they want to feel that they aren't just being told where to go to and where they have to sleep or what school they go to, and they don't have any choice in their life. So the trust factor is pretty low. I think it's our responsibility to build that back, to do things that they want to do, as well as in the point understanding where they've come from. And some young people have never even been able to choose a school or choose what their favourite clothes are, or maybe which bedroom in the house they want to sleep in. Many things that we all take for granted, So, and where they want to live, or who they want to spend the weekend with. They don't have those choices, some of these young people. So it's about giving them a voice and obviously a part in the decision making, and that builds trust.
Thanks, Justin. If you had the power to change one thing today to improve the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in Victoria, what would that be?
It's a big question. There's probably a whole list of things I'd love to say. But one thing, look, I would really, if there's one thing that could be changed, is that every young person, every child and young person, Aboriginal child and young person, that they could be connected to their family, know who they are, who their mob is, which country they come from, and that they'll be, and that connection isn't strained by anything external from them being with their family. It's a pretty big wish, because many of the young people we're talking about don't have that basic connection to their family, or they aren't on country, or they may not even know which mob they belong to. So for me, culture is centre. If we know where we come from, we know who our mob are, a lot of it, that puts us in a really strong position, and that's what many of the young people, going back to your first question, they told us culture was important. And I think if I had a wish, that would be the wish that I have, that all young people were connected to their family and know who their mob are in their own country.
Thanks, Justin. So it seems like this year's theme fits squarely with the priorities of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people you've spoken with. Just want to give you an opportunity to make any other points before we wrap up.
Yeah, I just would like to encourage everyone who's listening to this. It's not going to, we can't leave it for somebody else to fix or to step up to the plate. In our own areas of responsibility, our own areas of work, doing that little bit extra goes a long way, and our young people do notice it. So don't think it's unnoticed, even though they may not say thank you, or they may not let you know outwardly. But when you speak to them, that they can name the worker which has been good to them and which went the extra mile with them, or they can name the time that they felt really happy, and how that was taken. On the flip side of that, the other point of that, they can also tell you the worker that let them down, or the time they didn't get picked up when they were supposed to, or the promises that got broken. And that could be something very basic. Oh, well, we think that they wouldn't think about that, it wouldn't have an impact. But I've heard many who will say, yeah, I waited all day to be picked up because I was supposed to go on this camp, or I was supposed to go on this trip, and no one turned up for me. So be mindful of what you do, your actions, and how that is taken. It can have a real positive impact on a young person, and on the other side of it, it also can lead them it can reaffirm the disconnect or how they feel unvalued by us not doing some of those very small things, but very important to them.
Thanks so much, Justin Mohamed, Aboriginal Children's Commissioner for Victoria, for speaking with us today.
Thank you.